Do-Rag Wisdom here, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Y2K 21.01.05, 16 days to inauguration. The music you're hearing today is just random. Happy New Year, everyone. Don't be too disappointed in this new year that's coming up, because it's going to be a little similar to the last year, but there's going to be a lot more hope in it. Now just imagine if you decided to incite a riot. What would happen? Especially if you succeeded in making the riot and people got seriously hurt, even murdered. Hold that thought. Imagine if, goddess forbid, Trump had won the last election, and Joe Biden, with a slew of Democrats and millions of followers, decided that they were not going to accept the lawful constitutional election. I'll even go as far as saying that this time Trump managed to win the popular vote as well as the Electoral College vote. What would happen if Democrats all over this country decided that they were not going to accept the vote? Imagine that there was a threat to Trump that Democrats in the Senate will refuse to certify the Electoral College victory, ensuring that the works would be gummed up. Imagine that Biden and his bloody crew of radical socialist followers undermine everything the winner, Trump, tries to do in the days before his inauguration. Imagine if Biden calls for massive and wild protests in Washington, D.C. the very day of Trump's electoral certification. Those goddess damn Democrats, imagine that. Take a moment just to imagine everything. Well, that's Bronislaw Caper in the background from his main title and prologue to Mutiny on the Bounty remake with Marlon Brando and Trevor Howard. I think Richard Harris was in it too. You know, Bronislaw Caper also wrote San Francisco, the music for that movie San Francisco. San Francisco, open that golden gate. You got it. Have you finished imagining everything? Okay. You know exactly what would happen if the Democrats pulled that crap. The Republicans would be outraged. They would call for special counsels, investigations, and arrests for those violating our Constitution. The entire Democratic Party would be rightfully vilified before our entire nation, as it should be, because they are violating everything our country stands and fought for. Those mother effers. If they are demanding the ouster of Trump, the rightful winner of the election and the people's choice, the Democrats are fundamentally calling for the elimination of our democratic constitutional republic and replacing it with autocratic, totalitarian rule. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to scare you. There would be no question. Democrats all over our country would be condemned and their leaders investigated for treason. In the end, the outcast party would be guilty and then disbanded to replace by... Oh shit. Oh, Yes, I would be waking up screaming at this point. It would have been a nightmare. But I know that the scenario would proceed exactly as I dreamt it, or nightmared it. When Biden and anti-Trump rioters invade Washington, D.C., they will be met by police presence that would shrivel a chunk of iron. Trump, the winner, will be inaugurated whether we wanted him or not. And any Democrat, not Democratic, Democrat Biden supporter coming to Washington, D.C. to make trouble will be arrested for inciting riot. Ah! Ah! Oh! 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 I lost all my hair. Who stole my hair? Oh, shit! Oh, it was just a nightmare. Just another nightmare. Another nightmare. Sometimes you have nightmares within nightmares. You ever have that? You wake up from a nightmare and then you're still sleeping? Had that many times. I wake, thankfully, to a world where the opposite happened and Biden won. And his opposition, the Trumpist teabagger party that the late John McCain said would destroy the Republican Party, has refused to accept the legal, constitutional win of Joey. They refuse to accept the will of the majority of the citizens of our country. Trumpist senators are lining up to plan a coup against our free electoral will. Trump is encouraging his followers to descend on Washington to protest the Biden certification and to be wild. I expect for the police, if this happens, to behave against this rabble the way they behaved against the peaceful BLM protesters. I expect the vote to be certified the exact same way it was supposed to if Trump had won. Biden won this election! Now, let's go back to the beginning. Have you been imagining what would happen to you if you went out and incited riot the way our outgoing piece of crap so-called president is doing now? What would happen to you if you incited riot? There would be no freaking mercy, ladies and gentlemen. You would be arrested, charged, tried, convicted, and incarcerated. In our country, ladies and gentlemen, there is supposed to be equal treatment under the law, and there is no one above the law. Trump is going to be dealing with a lot of litigation over the next several years. Maybe the stress will kill him. One thing is certain: inciting violent hatred through riot should be added to the long list of the Trump shtup crimes. As of this week, more than 358,000 people are dead in our country from CV-19. Along with inciting riot, where people were actually killed, see Kenosha, and then ignoring virus protocols that murdered again those hundreds of thousands, Trump should be in prison for a long time. But again, execution should never be left off the table.